The UFC in 2025 has been a bit of a mixed bag. There's been some good events, some not so good events, and today I'm going to be going through every single pay-per-view that happened in 2025 and ranking them from worst to best. My criteria for this list will be simple. I'm going to be looking at the cards overall, top to bottom, and kind of determining what fights were disappointing, what was shocking or exciting, and kind of going off that. As you see the list, you guys will kind of get the gist of it. There's a lot to go through. Let's just get into it. So we had 13 pay-per-views go down in 2025, and coming in at number 13 is going to be UFC 312, Dricus du Plessis versus Sean Strickland 2. Yeah, I think this was the weakest card of 2025. The main event, wasn't all that exciting, and the co-main was Zhang Weili versus Tatiana Suarez, also not that entertaining of a fight, and this card had some pretty weak fights on the main card and the prelims as well. I think this is the weakest card of the year, and not the most disappointing because there weren't many expectations heading into it, but the first fight between DDP and Strickland was a lot better than the one we got on this card, so I was kind of hoping that that fight itself could carry it a bit more, but it didn't, so the event falls flat on its face. Number 12, UFC 316, Merab Dvalishvili versus Sean O'Malley 2. Another pay-per-view that just wasn't that good. A co-main event of Kayla Harrison and Juliana Pena is already set up to fail. And then in the main event, you had Merab and Sean 2 that nobody really wanted. Everybody kind of already saw what happened when these two fought the first time. No one really believed O'Malley was going to win. So honestly, it's pretty uneventful. And then the rest of the main card just isn't that good. You had Patchy Mix versus Mario Bautista. We know how that went. So yeah, not a great card. Honestly, another one of the weaker ones of the year, and that's why it's this low on the list. Coming in at number 11, UFC 318, Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier 3. It hurts me to put this card so low on the list, but honestly, it has to be. This card was just not that good looking back at it. We had Paulo Costa and Roman Kopylov in a co-main event on a pay-per-view. Come on, that's ridiculous. Also on the main card, you added some other whatever fights like D-Rod versus Kevin Holland, Pitbull versus Ige, Zellhuber versus Michael Johnson. There's not a lot to love here. And then you have the main event that this card was built off of, and that they were really just wanting people to focus in on, obviously. Holloway Poirier wasn't very eventful. Honestly, it didn't live up to expectations in my opinion. I was expecting a lot more out of that fight, and we just did not get it. So yeah, for those reasons, it has to be this low on the list. If the main event was better and a lot more entertaining, it could have brought it up this list a little more, but it wasn't, so it sits here at 11. Coming in at number 10, UFC 321, Tom Aspinall versus Ciryl Gane. This card is honestly not that bad. The prelims are pretty decent, had some really great moments. The main card wasn't too bad either. You had Umar Batista, Jailton Volkov, Rakic Mirzakhanov. Not a bad main card at all. In the co-main, obviously it's a bit lackluster. It's a female fight. Mackenzie Dern versus Verna Jandiroba. Wasn't the craziest of fights. Wasn't the worst female fight I've ever seen, but definitely wasn't the best. And then you have the main event, which is why it's this low on this list, and it pisses me off. The Aspinall-Gane fight, that whole situation, that whole shit show completely ruined this card, and honestly pissed me off for a while, to be honest, because I was waiting to see Aspinall fight. I wanted to see what would happen, and for it to end like that, it's just completely bullshit. And yeah, it topped off a pretty fun card and left a sour taste in everybody's mouth. That's why it's number 10. Number 9, UFC 313, Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev. This card, honestly, overall, as a card, is probably not as good as 321. It's pretty weak on the prelims, pretty weak on the main card, but it does get carried by some pretty special moments, mainly Maurizio Ruffy's spinning wheel kick versus Bobby Green. That was nuts. So that's honestly what put it this high on the list. Not really high, but still what bumped it up to this spot on the list. Yeah, there's not much else to say about this one. The main event, that's what sucked the life out of this whole card. Pereira Ank 1 is one of the worst fights I've ever watched, hands down. So yeah, that main fight really is what puts it this low on the list. And the Ruffy KO is honestly the only really great moment to take out of this card. Fazayev Gaethje was fun, but we already saw it. So yeah, for those reasons, UFC 313 coming in at 9. Number 8, UFC 315, Jack Della Maddalena versus Bilal Muhammad. This card was loaded with some big names, but it didn't have the craziest of moments. The co-main event, I mean, it was dull. Valentina Shevchenko versus Manon Fiorot. A lot of Valentina's fights are just boring as shit. Honestly, that's the truth at this point. So yeah, not the greatest of co-mains. And the main event, honestly, was a pleasant surprise. I thought JDM Bilal was going to be garbage, and it just wasn't. It was a pretty fun fight, pretty competitive. Both guys had their moments. So, yeah, that's why this one got up to here on this list. It was a nice surprise. Like, JDM Bilal, wasn't expecting much from that. And honestly, if Morales Burns stayed on here and BSD versus Joel Alvarez stayed on here, this would probably have been much higher. Number 7, UFC 319, Duplessis versus Chimaev. This was a pretty sick card. We had the back-to-back spinning elbows, Lerone Murphy and Carlos Prates. We had Michael Page and Jared Cannonier. Not a terrible fight. We also had Kaya Sakura and Tim Elliott, where Tim Elliott beat him. Big shock there. We had Susur Kaev's debut. There was a lot to love on this card, and it would have been much, much higher had it not been for that absolute garbage main event. That was Khamzat Chimaev versus Dricus du Plessis. That was my biggest disappointment of the year, hands down. That fight sucked, and I was expecting a lot more out of it. I thought it was going to be much more competitive, and it just wasn't. So I'm a little butthurt about this fight, to be honest. So maybe that's why it's as low as it is on this list. But I honestly think this is a fair placement. Like, a lot of people were expecting a lot from that main event, and it just did not deliver. Luckily, we had some stuff on the main card that saved it, but it wasn't enough for me. That was supposed to be one of the best fights of the year. It just wasn't. Number 6, UFC 311, Makhachev versus Moicano. This was a pretty loaded card to kick off 2025. There was a lot of fun fights on here. Merab versus Umar was awesome. Yuri had that crazy KO versus Jamal Hill. Almeida Spivak was on there. RDR Kevin Holland. It was a pretty good card overall. Then Arman Sarukian pissed in our cereal and absolutely ruined the card. And we were left with Renato Moicano on 24 hours notice to face Islam Makhachev. And of course, you can imagine exactly how that fight went. And yeah, it just kind of like left a sour taste in your mouth once again. You had a great main card, all built up to an awesome main event in Arman and Islam. And then Arman misses weight, pulled his back 24 hours before the fight, and Renato Moicano had to step in. An absolute joke. I mean, it's a fun moment that I guess we'll remember for a while. And looking back on Islam Makhachev's record, we're going to wonder how the hell Moicano was in the middle of one of his title defenses. But yeah, for those reasons, it has to be at number 6. And if we ended up getting Islam versus Arman, it'd probably be a lot higher. Number 5, UFC 314, Volkanovski versus Lopez. This card honestly looked like card of the year when it was made. In the main event, we had Volk versus Lopez, which was a pretty awesome fight. Pretty good. Co-main event, we had Paddy Pimblett versus Michael Chandler. He absolutely smashed him. That was a good fight as well. Yair Rodriguez versus Patricio Pitbull was on there. Gene Silva versus Bryce Mitchell, which was another awesome fight. You also had Dan Ige and Sean Woodson. A couple other ones. Good prelims. This was a really fun card overall. Nothing to extremely love here. No crazy wow moment as like a moment of the year from this card. But overall, just had solid fights top to bottom. And I don't really got much to complain about with this one, which is why I put it so high. Number 4, UFC 323. Merab Dvalishvili versus Petr Yan 2. Honestly, a solid way to end the year and a solid final pay-per-view of all time. Merab Dvalishvili versus Petr Yan was awesome. That upset was crazy, and that's why it's this high on the list, to be honest, because Petr Yan coming back and beating Merab when absolutely nobody thought he could do it is absolutely spectacular. Yan fought an amazing fight. It was an amazing moment. This card does get held back a bit with that co-main event with Pantoja and Van. I would have loved to see an actual fight in that, but Pantoja's freak injury kind of ruined that. Moreno Tyra was awesome. Talbot Cejudo was awesome. Guskov and Jan Blachowicz was whatever. And then Manuel Torres, Grant Dawson. There was a lot of fights that you can love here. Obviously a great prelims because it was towards the end of the year. The UFC has to stack prelim cards because people need to get paid. So really fun top to bottom. A solid way to end the year. It did lack that major star. And I think if it had that, would have been a lot better. But it didn't. And we're left with Merab versus Yan as the main event, and it still delivered in my opinion. Number 3, UFC 320, Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev 2. Now, I told you guys at the beginning of this video that big moments were going to be a main part of this list, and there isn't a moment much bigger than Alex Pereira coming back in the rematch and knocking Ankalaev out in round 1. I mean, that shit out of a fairy tale. You can't even make that up. Poatan came to play. It was amazing to see, and that is what carries the ranking for this card. Like, that main event, I mean, I was so happy. A lot of people were. It was awesome to see a legend like Pereira get his strap back against the only dude that could really beat him at 205. So that was awesome to see. You had Merab and Corey on there, which was a whatever fight that everybody knew Merab was going to win. So that wasn't the greatest, but I'll allow it, because before that, we had Yuri Prochazka versus Khalil Roundtree Jr., which was absolutely insane. Fight of the year contender for sure. That fight and the main event alone was enough to bring this card to number 3 on this list. And then you add in fun fights like Josh Emmett and Yusuf Zalal, Atiba Gauthier fighting on this card, and a couple others. And you realize that this is a solid pay-per-view overall and definitely warrants to be number 3 on this list. Number 2, UFC 322. Jack Della Maddalena versus Islam Makhachev. Now, I was going back and forth between this one and the number 1. It was really tough, but I ultimately landed with 322 at number 2. And that's for the main reason that is the main and co-main event on this card. Like, I'll get into that in a sec. Let's go through some of the other fun fights on this card. Like, this main card had BSD versus Dariush. BSD wins by KO in like a minute. Actually, not even a minute, like 20 seconds. Then you had Protez KOing Leon Edwards. You had Morales KOing Sean Brady. And it was amazing. It all led up to the co-main and the main. We were expecting massive things. Zhang Weili, Valentina Shevchenko. I said that was one of the biggest women's MMA fights of all time, if not the biggest. And that was absolutely a disaster. Completely disappointing. I should have knew it because it was Valentina that it was going to be boring, but I really didn't think it was going to be. And I was really pissed off after that. I was like, you know what? That really pissed me off. But at least we have JDM versus Makhachev now. That should be better. Oh man, was I ever wrong. That fight sucks so much. And that was honestly probably worse than the co-main. The co-main sucked the life out of everybody in the building, but the main event took everyone's soul. That was absolutely pathetic. Islam pretty much just laid on him and dominated him. Whatever. I'm not going to sit here and argue about styles and what I think is good or not good, because that's a completely different video entirely. So yeah, I'm just going to focus on that. And yeah, Islam versus Jack, like a terrible, terrible fight. Valentina, Zhang Weili, a terrible, terrible fight. And then you're left with just a great card after that. But how much does it really matter if your co-main and your main sucked? For that reason, I put it at number 2. Number 1, UFC 317, Ilia Topuria versus Charles Oliveira. Now, I may be a little biased with this one. I did watch this in a packed movie theater, and these are 2 of my favorite fighters, so my experience may have been different here, but I truly do believe this was the card of the year. In the main event, Topuria Oliveira. Obviously, a lot of people kind of felt that Topuria was going to KO him, but it's still Charles Oliveira. Like, you can't really count him out. So, a lot of people expected the KO, but it didn't make that it wasn't awesome. Topuria becoming a double champ, knocking out Charles Oliveira, continuing his finish streak. It's honestly very, very impressive and was one of the biggest moments of the year easily. Co-main event, you had Alejandro Pantoja versus Kai Kara France. Nice, slick finish from Pantoja in that one. And then you also had Brandon Royval versus Joshua Van, which is also a fight of the year contender, if not the fight of the year. It honestly might be. That fight was absolutely awesome. So you have all that. Then you have the Moicano Dariush. You got Payton Talbot versus Felipe Lima. Robocop, Hermanson. There's a lot of fun fights on this card. And yes, it wasn't the most spectacular of names for International Fight Week. The card probably should have been better, but the fights on there delivered. Van, Royval, awesome. Pantoja, Kai Kara France, pretty awesome. And then you had the main event, Topuria Oliveira. It all led up to just a great moment in the end, which a lot of these other cards cannot relate to. A lot of these other cards have great prelims and a great main card, but shitty main events. And that is not the case here. We had a great main event, a great co-main event, and a potential fight of the year contender. For all those reasons, that's why it's number 1 on my list. Well, there you guys have it. Those are every single UFC pay-per-view ranked from worst to best in 2025. I do think there was a lot of mid cards this year, but there was still some fun ones and a lot of great moments. Thank you all for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Also, if you like this type of video, check out some of the other ones I have on the channel. My ranking videos seem to be some of my most popular ones, so I'm going to keep doing them. Drop some ideas for other ranking videos you want to see. I'll catch you all in the next one.